ATF advisor Dr. Edsel Salvania sees no need to raise the COVID-19 alert level despite the rise in infections. Most of the country, including Metro Manila, are under COVID alert level 1 until July 15.
And the Health Department reports over 5,700 cases of dengue in NCR since the start of the year. That's 28% higher than the dengue cases recorded in the same period last year.
Importante yung awareness at this point in time sa ganitong klaseng infection dengue because meron tayong findings before the pandemic 2018. Tumataas yung mortality, namamatay ng mga kaso ng dengue, especially the children and adolescents dahil late ang pagpunta nila sa mga hospital.
Cases involving the Omicron subvariant in the Philippines are going up, but health experts are quick to say nothing to worry about. The numbers are under control. The best defense still, vaccines. The DOH admits they're not reaching vaccination targets. What's the impact of this refusal to get vaccinated? Welcome to the Chiefs. Ako po si Roby Alampay. Kasama po natin online, Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5. Chiefs, good evening.
Good evening.
And what are we monitoring, Ami?
New appointments muna. Yung ating ambassador to the UK, nalipat na siya ng permanent representative to the UN. Tapos si Ginny Kuwa na nga yung PCSO at si Tirso Cruz III, ang bagong Film Development Council.
FDC. Yeah.
Yes.
Ikaw, LCV, anong bumulaga sa'yo?
Well, just tonight, di ba? Or late this afternoon, mukhang magiging mandatory na yung first booster. Di ba?
Yes.
Mukhang i-approve na. Yeah. So, yun. Alam ko, dami pang hindi nagpapabooster. Even among my circle of friends. Ako nagpa-booster na, proudly.
Ako rin, ang tanong ko na lang nga ngayon yung second booster di ba? Lalong-lalo na pinag-uusapan nila kung kailangan ibaba yung recommended age. Alam mo naman kami mga millennial hindi pa kami recommended mag-take ng second booster.
Hoy, Bernard, tumigil ka. Nangangarap ka.
Sige. Tanungin natin tong first guest natin, our first guest tonight, infectious disease expert Dr. Rontgene Solante. Sir, welcome back to the program.
Hi, Roby. Good evening. Good evening, Ami. Good evening, Luchi.
Sir, ano bang latest recommendations when it comes to the first booster and the second booster?
Okay, so the first booster is for the general population, and that also includes the 12 to 17 years old. The second booster is still for the vulnerable population, the immunocompromised, the 60 years old and above, and the healthcare workers. So that's the current recommendation, that's the current guideline on COVID vaccination.
Okay, pero nung isang araw po, I remember we were talking to Dr. Nina Gloriani and they said napapag-usapan na rin kung ibababa yung age, particularly for the second booster. Where are we in those conversations?
For us experts, that's our recommendation. Lowering it to 50 years old and then above, and then the comorbidities. Those with comorbidities are or has the same risk as those who are elderly in terms of mortality, severe COVID, especially with this new Omicron sublineages, wherein may not be bad for the general population, for the younger population, but it can be bad for those who are in the vulnerable population.
Pero Doc, parang hanggang ngayon, napakadami pa rin, sabihin na natin, cross signals, no? Because there's also pronouncements out there saying na mukhang this is the start of the endemicization, or whatever the noun is, no? Because we're seeing huge numbers, but at the same time, We're still on alert level 1. Even most of the hospitals are not really reporting huge numbers of admissions for COVID. Where are we really?
Yes, that's correct. No, even with the number of cases, and in fact, the experience with most countries now. If you look at the WHO data, most countries now are reporting increase in the cases. But what is good, the healthcare utilization, the hospitalized population has not increased. So with this B5, no. But we always imply if cases go up to the point of thousands, there will always be possibility that these people will go to the hospital, even if they have moderate symptoms, especially for the vulnerable population. And for this, that can be a possible signal that it still can overwhelm our healthcare facilities, no? Even if they are not having the severe form of the infection. So that in itself is still something that we need to monitor. So hindi pa natin dapat sabihin na endemic na tayo. The variants are the game changers now. Look at some of these countries. B5 is now the dominant variant. Ang bilis niyang napalitan si B2. And alam natin, ang B5 is a totally different virus that we had 2021 or 2020. No? It's a total facelift of the COVID virus. And that's why primary vaccine series, you don't have protection. If you had the booster, you'd have at least 50% protection.
Doktor, ang report ngayon ng Department of Health today, lalo daw dumadami yung mga nakukuhang cases ng Omicron subvariant na highly contagious. Sa nakikita niyo sa hospitals, ano yung pagkakaiba niya? Para lang medyo nervousin mga tao at mapabilis siguro booster natin.
Yes.
Ano yung nakikita niyo? Yung mga naka-hospitalized na cases of Omicron.
Okay, most of the cases pupunta sa hospital, moderate or even mild, no? They still have very minimal pneumonia. They have body weakness, and they have the typical symptoms, the cough and the fever. But why did they go to the hospital, especially for the private patients? Because they are afraid. Baka magpo-progress ang sintomas. So they still go to the hospital. Ang problema kasi nito, pag napupunan na yung hospital because of this worry na baka mag-severe, then that can be another possibility na ma-overwhelm. No? So they don't go there because they have difficulty in breathing or they need oxygen or something like that we experience with Delta. But the fact that they have cough, they have fever, and then pag nakita na positive sila sa test, doon ang mindset nila, pupunta ako sa hospital. Baka naman malala ako dahil meron akong diabetes, meron akong hypertension, meron akong sakit sa puso. Uunahan ko na to.
Yung mga patients, ano yung age na pinakamarami? Marami bang bata or maraming elderly?
So far, nakita namin ngayon, more or less pareho. No? May mga bata, meron ding younger population, meron ding mga talagang, ang kadalasan merong mga comorbidities talaga, yung worry nila. But we're also seeing reports, and in fact, nakikita rin natin, may mga bata rin, no? Less than 10 years old, no? Less than 8 years old.
Dr. Solante, nabanggit po ni President Marcos that in consultation also with Vice President Sara Duterte as a Department of Education Secretary, that they want to target November as face-to-face classes na full for and they see a phasing in starting September, and hopefully by November pwede na raw buuin. With everything that you're seeing right now, how confident are you that those targets can be achieved?
We still have like July, August, September, October, November, no, in vaccinating the children and the adolescents. Mukhang kaya naman, no? Basta as long as these vaccination centers are in place. The other alternative there is to put vaccination centers in schools. Kung halimbawa, nandun ka na sa school, and then it will be accessible to those who will be on a face-to-face classes, that can be a very good alternative, especially sa mga areas na ang access sa mga bakuna medyo difficult.
Is there is there any obstacle to, I'm sorry, just a quick, is there any obstacle, is there any risk or difficulty or complication in carrying out that? And I remember nung bata, may bakuna sa eskwelahan. I didn't even understand what was going on, di ba? Pero pinapila kami and so on. Is it as simple as that, or is there something that needs to happen to capacitate schools and teachers to actually carry it out at the level of their schools?
Madali na lang yan, Roby, no? Kasi all schools naman are required to have a nurse and a doctor, no? So, di ba yung meron tayong department order no na any private physician or any institution can also access the vaccine if they can get the vaccine and can vaccinate also their sa workplace, no? Parang anuhin lang natin, i-extend it to the school, and ang doctor sa school, nurse will coordinate with the Department of Health. Madali lang yun, basta as long as ma-comply lang yan yung I would say kung talagang for me I hate to really put the word mandatory, no, but we do encourage them, no, and the one way of encouraging them is really convincing the parents, kasi ang mga parents ang magbibigay ng consent doon sa less than 12 years old, no, or sa less than 15 years old. But for the adolescent naman, they can decide on their own. Napaka-crucial ang information dissemination, and importante na when we communicate the message, why is it important? It's mainly because protection, pure protection. Hindi ka mahawaan, hindi ka magkasakit. Kung magkasakit ka man, you are not at risk for severe infection. And ngayon, tumataas ang mga infection sa mga bata, no? In some countries, no? Especially for the age group na hindi pa recommended ang bakuna, like the less than 5 years old. That's why for us, we need to really ramp up the vaccination of those who are qualified, and then review the data on the less than 5 years old para at least meron protection ang mga bata.
Ni-roll out na yung boosters for ages 12 to 17 eh. Kumusta yung initial reaction? Kasi I understand, mataas pa rin yung vaccine hesitancy among parents, no? At medyo natatakot pa rin sila. Meron pa rin yung takot na yan. Kumusta siya yung reaction?
Well, so far, medyo smooth naman ang implementation noon, no? Na-delay lang ng konti, but the acceptance, no? So far, especially with the 12 to 17 years old, mukhang hindi naman ganun kahirap mag-convince, because I think parents already know the importance of vaccine, and for us to help this population na hindi talaga magkakasakit, no? Now, I want to make a point here, no? The problem with the B5 is that even if you are infected before, you can still get the infection. There are data now telling us that when you have a reinfection, your risk of more severe COVID will also be high. Your risk of the long COVID, especially sa puso at saka sa lungs, will also be higher. So I think one of the important message there, prevent getting the vaccine to prevent getting reinfected, and prevent also long COVID and complications, long-term complications of COVID.
So,
What's holding up the decision on the 50-year-olds? Marami kong kilalang mga 50 to 60 na gustong magpa-second booster na eh. Bakit matagal nyo nang inirekomenda yun, di ba?
Oo, matagal na yan. Even before the election, nag-ingay na tayo, no? So I hope na napakinggan ngayon ng mga leaders natin, no? And I hope that soonest time possible, mabigyan talaga, no? Kasi napaka-importante nitong vulnerable population. In any event na kung meron man tayong priority for the booster, unahin natin ang vulnerable population kasi ito talagang pupunta ng hospital. And siguro, ang importante ngayon, ang messaging din natin, no? That the primary vaccine series is not already something that can protect you. The booster will be the one that will decide and can sustain the protection.
Pero again, sir, yung ano lang, I want to ask about the latest data and research on the second booster in particular. Dahil again, what the experts have been saying is the reason it's limited for now to senior citizens and the immunocompromised is because so far the data had shown that for other sectors, negligible ang effect ng second booster. Is there, I mean, do we get that right, or is there an update on those insights?
Yeah, yes, correct, Roby, no? It's ang term there is marginal. So meaning ang effect, like for example, if I'm a 45-year-old without a comorbidity, if I'll be getting a second booster, comparing that to another 45-year-old, same, medyo pareho lang yung protection namin. Walang ganun kataas na benefit. But if I'm an immunocompromised, I'm an elderly 60 years old, the second booster has a more significant protection compared to just one booster.
Okay, and then if you could, sir, pakiulit lang because I want to make sure that we got that right as well. Yung nabanggit nyo kanina, that if you were exposed before and if you got COVID before and then you get it again, mas mataas ngayon ang chances.
Reinfected.
Oo, mas mataas ang likelihood na maging mas matindi ang symptoms.
Yes, mas matindi ang symptoms, mas magiging severe because the reinfection now is another variant, no? And when you have a reinfection, because of the effect of the previous infection na medyo may lamat na doon sa katawan mo, may lamat na doon sa puso at sa lungs mo, the second infection can facilitate more complications and long-term complications.
So hindi niya ini-increase yung immunity mo pag immunocompromised ka or may comorbidity? Is that what you're saying?
The problem with the first infection is that with COVID, you have long COVID. So in that first infection, your heart problem may be still there, na hindi nawala, no? Yung lung problem mo hindi nawala, yung fatigue hindi pa nawala because of the long COVID, and you have another infection of COVID, more inflammation, chances are you will be having the severe consequences.
Pero ito yung mga nag-long COVID. But those who just got, the regular COVID, because that's what we were told before, no? That when you actually get the COVID, tapos may vaccine ka pa, para kang doubly immune. So now I'm hearing from you na a reinfection might increase or the severity of symptoms. So how are we going to
Ganito yan, Luchi, no? So if you have the first infection, you are protected. But if you are not protected, you got the second infection because you have a breakthrough infection kasi hindi kaya ng antibody yung first infection mo, that will have some more complications on your part because of that reinfection. So it's independent of the protection. Kasi pag first infection ka, you have that antibody, but that antibody doesn't work anymore because this is now a new variant.
Yeah. But speaking of not working anymore, what about the sectors and the demographics na hindi immunocompromised, younger set, as we said, and we are now also aware about waning efficacy. So what happens? On the one hand, we're telling them, huwag ka na mag-second booster kasi wala, parang placebo na lang yung effect niya. Pareho lang yan ang effect ng ibang hindi In the meantime, they say, okay, it doesn't make sense for me to line up or to crowd the lines for the second booster. But in the meantime, I'm also getting reminded na, beyond 6 months, nagwe-wane yung efficacy niyan. So, hanggang doon na lang yan?
Hindi, ganito yan. Ang priority natin ngayon, kung wala ka pang booster, get the first booster. Okay? Yun muna ang tapusin natin, especially for the general population. Okay? Now, let's see. Tingnan natin with the current wave after this B4, B5, kung wala nang ibang variant of concern, I think we are okay with the first booster. But what if another variant will come in? Okay, will we be giving this same vaccine or should we need another vaccine that is already variant specific? That's a decision that we need to monitor.
Yun nga tatanong ko, Doctor, kasi meron nga daw mga bagong dinevelop na vaccines that are specific to the subvariants. So tinitingnan nyo rin ba yun? And are we going to have to get those new, completely new na daw yan na new vaccines na
Yes, there are
attacking the Omicron subvariants. And in fact,
Yes,
sabi nila, baka daw we might have to get COVID shots every 9 months.
That's also a possibility, no? Ang titingnan na muna natin dito ngayon is we're monitoring the new variant, the Omicron variant boosters, no? That is being developed now by Moderna and Pfizer, and they have very good data that with this Omicron variant booster, ang taas ng protection. Kasi ang problema talaga natin ngayon ang Omicron. So if we are going to recommend a booster, then it should be an Omicron variant booster rather than just this present generation of vaccine.
So theoretically, you would have to get a vaccine for every variant that's discovered. Ganun
Yes.
ba yan?
Ganon ang mangyayari niyan, Luchi, until such time we will be able to develop what we call universal COVID vaccine. Ano ba yung universal? Covers everything na talagang nandun na yung possible mutations, possible risk of that mutation na covered na sa ganong klaseng bakuna. But it's still a long way. And ang tinitingnan ngayon ng mga expert is yung tinatawag natin na nasal form of vaccine, because all of these vaccines now na ini-inject sa atin cannot block the infection. So for us to have that blocking activity, yung tinatawag natin na nasal, because ang entry point is in the mucosal, mataas ang chance na you will not get the infection.
Okay, Doc, last question na lang. Historically, I mean, as we said, this is not the first time we've dealt with the pandemic. This is not the first time the whole world has had to deal with viruses and their variants. So we've been through this in history. From a technical standpoint and experience in history, how long before everything tapers off on the side of the mutations? And then at the same time, to the point that that also intersects with developing a universal vaccine?
Just give you an example. Influenza vaccine, the target is a universal vaccine, but until now, we don't have that universal vaccine. It's so long already.
Kaya may annual flu shot.
Yes, may annual flu shot. Depende doon sa bansa kung ano yung dominant na serotype. No?
Strain.
So, yung strain. Now, the experts attended a lot of these meetings, and the prediction really is this pandemic, whether you call this a pandemic or an endemic, this will not disappear too soon because of the ability of this virus to mutate and create new variants. This will be part of our livelihood, part of our life, longer.
Okay. Dr. Solante, parang ayoko kayong bitawan eh. Parang gusto ko lang magdala. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. Alam naman namin, babalik din kayo one of these days. Maraming salamat po, Dr. Rontgene Solante.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Doc.
We'll start another conversation after this break, answering the question, nasaan ang manok? That's next on The Chief. Stay right here. Welcome back, The Chiefs, here on One News. Hashtag Chicken Sad is going viral once again after several fast food chains, including McDonald's and Jollibee, were unable to serve chicken meals. Let's talk about chicken supply. Joining us via Zoom, United Broiler Raisers Association President, Mr. Bong Inciong. Good evening once again, Mr. Inciong.
Good evening.
Yes, sir. Kala ko, after 30 to 60 days nyo pa ako hanapin.
Oo nga. Akala natin
Wala
mag-normalize.
yung namin eh.
Oo. Hindi lang.
Wala manok siya ang hinahanap namin. Kaya kayo dapat ang representative nila.
Dalawa po ang in-demand ngayon. Ang demand ngayon, chicken, tsaka si Mr. Inciong. Kanina lang po nakausap ko si Mr. Inciong sa The Big Story, and we were talking about the short term. And unfortunately, we always talk about the moment. We never have time at the end to talk about the long term. So I want to start with that because kanina nabanggit ni Mr. Inciong, mahirap naman na asahan sa gobyerno na immediately to solve this, lalo-lalo bago ang gobyerno, given that this has been nearly 30 years of neglect of the industry. So I want to ask you, sir, so we can start it off on a conversation we always run out of time for. What's the 1-minute version of the 3 decades neglect that you were saying about this, about the poultry industry?
Number one, you follow the system you got into, which is the WTO. Means aside from market access, which is meaning nag-liberalize sila, you provide domestic support as provided in the WTO, which would include subsidies. Then you implement your trade remedies. It's in the laws also. And you have your quarantine so that we can more or less control diseases like ASF, avian influenza, and others. And then the laws implementing those commitments to WTO you need to implement. I mentioned them before, the AFMA, the Agri-Fisheries Modernization Act. And also, the more important thing, short-term, long-term, is the consultations so that the President and the future permanent Secretary of Agriculture would more or less be guided because the DA has a problem with institutional memory. Marami hong bago dyan.
Ano po
So,
parating? Go ahead, Luchi, sorry.
So ano ho ang nagiging sanhi ngayon nitong pinakahuling update no ng shortage ng manok? Gayong we interviewed you, I think, just over a week ago, and you
2 weeks, ma'am.
at least, as I recall, no, you kind of like assured us that given the short amount of time needed to raise chickens, na kung magno-normalize naman yung feed situation, madali namang mabalik sa normal. Ano pa nangyari ngayon? Mukha bang hindi natin magagawa yun?
Kasi there's no assurance that we will be able to solve the feed quality problem immediately. There are efforts by our animal nutritionists, by the feed millers. But we compare the situation now to 2003. Ang daming iba kasi, ma'am, nung tinignan namin when we tap into our collective memories as raisers. Noong time na yun, ma'am, walang problema yung hog industry.
Okay. Ngayon nasa bayan.
And sabay-sabay ho eh. It is prudent now to assume the worst. This is not the first time we're doing this, ma'am. Even in 2003, kami rin noon nagsabi na may shortage. As a matter of prudence, nagkaroon nga ho ng labanan noon at that time, Senator Rojas was still Secretary of the DTI, and DA Secretary Lorenzo was, he was the DA Secretary, si Tito Lorenzo. And there was, dahil nga wala hong data system, no one knew the terrain up to today, there was a debate kung may shortage o wala. That's the reason for this discussion. Prudence dictates that we assume the worst because there are differences with 2003. Nung tiningnan namin, ma'am, when ninervyos ho kami. Kasi another thing, ma'am, nagmamahal ho yung sisiu. The day-old chick, which becomes the chicken, your fried chicken, is getting more expensive. Back in May, nasa less than 30 pesos lang siya. Ngayon, naglalaro siya between 38 to 42.
Bakit daw?
Ma'am, that's the thing that worries us. The feed problem may have gone into also the breeder base. Hindi na lang ho doon sa broiler. Because itong chicken ho natin, it comes from hens and roosters.
Yes.
And normally, the highest quality feeds and highest quality raw materials would go to the breeders. Because ano ho yan long-term hold ho yan. Mga 18 months to 2 years ho yan na hawak ng farm And normally, you give your best quality raw materials for your breeders. But since it's going up, there is some concern that the feed quality problem may have been, it's there already. It may be there already with the breeders also. And that is why the day-old chick is getting more expensive. Coupled with the fact that there is no alternative commodity to run to, unlike in 2003 na yung hog industry normal, yung fisheries normal, yung gulay mo normal. We have to assume the worst, and hopefully if we assume the worst, it would trigger hopefully that the Department of Agriculture will revive the task force on price and volume watch. That task force was created by former President GMA, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, back in late in 2003, precisely to avoid the kind of shortage that happened in 2003. That it was an initial effort of having some data and having a look at the terrain of the industry. Unfortunately, I am here again with that word, unfortunately, but during the time of GMA, that task force met every month. And then up to the middle of the term of President Noynoy, every month, then medyo nabawasan. By the time of the Secretary Piñon, sporadic siya. During the time of Secretary Dar, it never met. And that probably that is the reason we're all blind to really what is there. Yan ho, it goes back to what I'm saying. We have no data and information system. Kaya nagkakagulatan, ma'am
Mr. Inciong, I know
Yes,
domestic producers, of course, don't like imports. Pero kung ganitong may shortages all around, pati nga mo sa fisheries, maganda bang short-term na solusyon yung magpapa-import? Although President Marcos has already said he will put the brakes on importations, no? Pero may choice ba tayo na hindi mag-import just to...
Ma'am, that is another thing. That is another thing which concerns us. Mahal ngayon din ho yung imports, like in 2003. And worse, in 2003, pag may mabibili in 2004, yung problema abroad at that time, short-term duration, hindi nagka-COVID, walang disruptions in transportation, in shipping, wala ang Ukraine war. Ngayon ho, iba, I don't think we can rely because, for example, if you order now, let's say chicken from Brazil, US, or Europe, maswerte na 60 days. Nung araw yan, ma'am, 30 days lang or less darating maraming shipments ngayon, dumarating ho, mga 90 days. And that is what we're concerned about. Although there will be some players in the industry who will complain about what I'm saying. But right now, we have to assume the worst, and the President should convene that task force or create another task force to look at the terrain so that we have a clearer picture. Right now, ma'am, we cannot identify the enemy. We cannot identify the contours of the opponent. Saan ho ba ang problema talaga? Feeds lang ba to? may underlying disease problem ba na hindi namin nakikita? We are not veterinarians. Is it merely the weather? Hopefully, it's the weather. Kanya lang, these are things that require detailed discussions with the DA, with their technical people, our technical people, even with the importers. That task force included importers. That was, in a way, it is important to have that kind of those types of meetings. Because the importers became human beings and not caricatures, and vice versa also.
Well, Mr. Inciong, nabanggit nyo nga po, even if we were to import, you said 60 to 90 days din yan bago dumating. But,
yes, sir.
But coming back to domestic production, and as you said, let's assume the worst. Sabi po ng Pangulo, habulin natin ang last planting season, maybe that will help. But even if that works, even if the weather cooperates and mahabol natin sa last planting season and there's a bumper crop of everything, by the time all of that comes together and helps to feed our broilers and the breeders and the breeder stock, what is on the domestic production side, what are the best and worst case scenarios?
Until I see a projection from the breeders, there is no confidence there. We need to see a projection, because the projections we're seeing independently done by some veterinarians are what they call the life cycle model. That is just a first step in the old days sa task force. Normally, they will apply statistical analysis there, and you will have a more accurate picture relatively. And right now, sir, until I see a projection that seems to make sense to me, this is the reason why we're asking for a meeting, so that the sooner we can figure out where we are, the better. And, if it is merely self-interest, I will just keep quiet. But our tradition in our organization, like in 2003, we might as well tell the truth always. Kasi kami rin humumurahin. Kasi nangyari ho yun sa amin 2003 eh. Nagsabi na nga kami ng totoo, kami pare, nasama kami. Ma'am?
Who should call for that?
Normally, ma'am, that is automatic on the part of the Director of the Bureau of Animal Industry.
So right now, he's not calling it?
I don't think there is a sitting director. I do not know who is the OIC, but the president should call that, and the industry, including the importers, should get our heads together and try to avoid a really bad situation.
Linawin ko lang, may shortage ba tayo o wala? Kasi naghahanap pa na nga dun sa Jollibee, saka sa...
Hindi nga niya ma-determine.
Ma'am, talaga ma'am, kasi bobolahin ko kayo pag sinabi kong...
Wala.
Pag sinabi ko naman meron, paano kung mali ako?
Oo.
We have no... Normally, ma'am, allow me to say this. Normally, ma'am, you should not be talking to me. Because I am industry, I have biases. You should be talking to the government. In other countries, ganun po. That word again, unfortunately, we are in this situation kasi nga ho, marami hong hindi nasunod eh.
Okay, well, Mr. Bong Inciong of the United Broiler Raisers Association. Sir, maraming...
May I add one more thing, sir?
Sige po.
About importation, there's always importation, regular importation. Coming in regularly, the president and those who are not familiar ho, they may be referring to special importations, meaning at tariff rates below our commitments with the WTO. It's also a confusing fact. Akala ho kasi kayang-kayang pigilan ho yung imports eh. Imposible ho yun under the WTO rules. And it belies the false narrative that we are protected.
Sige, we'll have to carry on the conversation on those points. Sir, maraming salamat po. Mr. Bong Inciong once again of the United Broiler Raisers Association.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Sana
sir.
magsawa na ho kayo sa amin.
Kailangan balik mo na yung manok.
Well, anyway,
Sige po, nice talking to you, ma'am.
magandang gabi po sa
Sir.
inyo.
Thank you po, sir.
And now from chicken to crafts, we're now joined by world-renowned and award-winning industrial designer Kenneth Cobonpue. Welcome to the Chiefs, Mr. Cobonpue.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening from Cebu.
Yes.
As we said, from chicken sad, baka naman mas magandang prospects natin sa industriya nyo. How are things going in your part of the market? And how are things going now that we're trying to reopen to the world?
Yeah, well, the problem now, in terms of export, the shipping, the logistics, no, it's a big problem. Before, a 40-footer we used to ship from Cebu to LA used to cost $3,000, and now the price is anywhere from $15,000 to $18,000.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's even if you can get a container, you have to book a so yeah, that price really wipes out all the margins. So
And
that's the problem with export.
And that's just price.
That-
We're not yet talking. We're not even. That's just price. But you're also hinting at congestion, and I imagine the
Yes.
schedules are also all out of whack.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's very hard to book a container, and that's a problem. I guess.
bakit po? No, so
because-
make us understand what's the cause of this shortage of containers now.
Well, I really think it's artificial. It's all the shipping companies have consolidated. So now President Biden explained very well. No, there's only 3 big shipping companies left. So it's like a monopoly, basically, in the shipping industry. Yeah, because the shipping industries have recorded. They've announced record profits over the past 2 years. So it started with the pandemic, and then but now there should be no problem with trade, but the shipping prices are still high, and of course now they blame it on fuel. So
Okay.
that's
So parang
so that's a
merong
problem for our exporters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem. And how is government? Is government intervening in any way to correct this situation?
I don't think I don't think our government can do
price
anything.
fixing
It's a worldwide problem. It's not only us Filipinos, but every Asian exporter. It's a problem.
So how do you cope?
No, the fuel is a problem, but the price fixing, is that domestic? I mean, is that a local problem?
Yeah, there's many angles. No, there's many. No, it's not a local problem. It's an international problem. It's an international problem that shipping prices are high. It's nothing that our national government can do.
Okay.
Well, I understand
that's-
one of the problems that have plagued the local furniture industry was the copying of your designs. Now, especially by Chinese furniture makers, and I'm selling them at a very low price. Is that still a problem up to now?
Yes, that's a general problem. It's not really copies. It's just in general, Chinese products are cheaper and in some ways also better made, I guess. And that was a problem. I mean, that problem has been around for 2 or 3 decades. Yeah.
But you would say
It's,
we are competitive. The local industry is competitive, even with Chinese competition.
I think that we have to move on. I mean, the Chinese labor is high. It's about the same, actually. No, it's about on par or even sometimes more expensive than Filipino labor. It's just that they're, I guess, more efficient. There's also a cheaper price of everything that supports an industry, like fuel. The materials are there. They're also more efficient in terms of the workers, more efficient. So we just have to compete. In my case, I compete through design, right? Through design and branding.
Yes.
Yeah? But it's not but that's not a strategy that every Filipino company can take.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask, how do you cope? Because the 500% increase in shipping, as you said, does not even include the cost of materials, the fuel, and so on. So I was gonna ask, how do you cope? And beyond yourself, what do you tell other furniture makers and other exporters? How can they cope?
I think they can cope by being, first, efficient. No? Second, in general, there's nothing we can do about shipping. It's that's an added cost, but we can give more value through design, through price, can be through quality, through many other things. But it's not easy, of course. But I think that government should really look at manufacturing again, because really, I think that almost in all sectors, we've been importing almost everything. And we are a country of very, very skilled people. So I think that we should really revive our whole manufacturing industries.
Well, by revival, what kind of support might the government give to the furniture industry?
Many. There's everything from fiscal incentives for one, for aid to exhibit. I'm a product actually of government, because CITEM, which is the government arm,
yes.
the exhibition arm, CITEM, funded all my exhibitions in the early years. I was with a group of other designers called Movement 8. And that was where the world saw not only my furniture, but the whole, what we were capable of. And that was all because government decided to spend and brought us abroad to showcase the best of the country. So there are many ways.
Do you see
also,
that? Yeah.
Deregulation.
Do you
also,
see that? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah, that also there's so many rules and requirements that are almost ridiculous for furniture manufacturer.
You mentioned the skills,
and I think the government has to streamline. Yeah.
You mentioned
Go ahead.
you mentioned the skills, the creativity, the artistry of our people as being a real strength. In the past months, and even a couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about really nurturing the creative economy, the creative industries. Very often we talk about the creative sectors, the visual and the performing arts, but really, it really encompasses a lot of industries, furniture included. Are you part of these conversations, and how do you think it is being framed right now, and how useful will it be for giving a different perspective and a different competitive advantage to the Philippine economy?
Yes, I'm part of that, and I'm very happy that the Creative Economy Bill has passed. I think it's an important first step, but like everything, like all our laws, I think it's the implementation that's very, very important, and government should give, I think, incentives for manufacturers like me. I think that the creative industry is one industry where we Filipinos can be really good at. I mean, we've been left behind in all the other all the other fields like science and manufacturing, and because it just requires so much capital. And I think the creative industry, from animation to film to to manufacturing, is something where we can really excel. I mean, you've seen naman how creative we are in the world. So I think that government should really look at this as an industry in its own right. I mean, yeah.
But, you know, the film industry is also expecting a kind of government support that it has not seen in a while, especially with the Marcos administration back. No, are you feeling the same way? Are you expecting the same support? Are you feeling optimistic about it?
With this administration, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For your industry. I hope so. My only fear is that I think government doesn't have much money left after the pandemic. And and so I think we all have good intentions. But I don't think we have anything left in our coffers. But I believe that because look at Korea, for example, how government has created a strategy for its film, for its you know it well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ang hirap niyan, economy ang problema talaga. And in the list of priorities, where do you think you stand as an industry? Because, syempre, they're going to have to prioritize, di ba? We were just talking about food security, and where would you be in that list, I think?
Well, right now it's quite low, no? And I think that's sad, because in a way we give a lot of jobs actually, the manufacturing industry.
Yes.
And with the manufacturing industry, other auxiliary industries that support manufacturing are also developed in terms of scale, in terms of so we do give a lot of jobs. Yeah. So. I think we belong with all. Manufacturing as a whole should really be revived. That's why.
Right.
That's my call. Yeah.
Okay. Kenneth Cobonpue, sir, unfortunately we're out of time, but thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luchi. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And of course, once again, our gratitude to Kenneth Cobonpue. Everybody knows, world-renowned, award-winning industrial designer. Before we end, let's watch this.
I believe in the Filipino creative. The creative sector is where we can really compete. The vocabulary of Filipino design is still being written today. And I hope that what I'm doing is just the first, and I'd like to see a whole generation of designers after me add to that design vocabulary so that we have something truly unique and powerful in the world.
Be sure to catch Infinite Legacies featuring Kenneth Cobonpue this Sunday, July 10 at 7 p.m. here on One News. That's all we have for the Chiefs this evening. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Roby Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
And I'm Luchi Cruz-Valdes of News 5, and we are One News.